when I went to Princeton, I was intending to major in the Woodrow Wilson School of International Affairs, become a diplomat. Um, and the first meeting I had with my advisor during freshman week, my advisor was a Middle Eastern literature specialist. Professor Kritzik was his name. And he sat me down and he said, I have just spent the most fascinating summer in Japan, where I read Japanese literature, I met Japanese film directors and literary critics, and I ate Japanese food. And he said it was magical. And so he said, you should take Japanese and you should major in Japanese studies. Oh, I was astounded that a Middle Eastern specialist was giving me this advice. But he was my advisor, and he insisted that I enroll in beginning Japanese, which was being offered for the first time in 1960 at Princeton. So I enrolled in beginning Japanese, and then I started taking Japanese history classes, literature classes, and I became fascinated. I mean, really, it was the literature that captured my attention early. I took a class on classical Japanese literature, read in translation the Manyoshu, which is a collection of classical Japanese poetry, and then The Tale of Genji, the first great novel in the world. And I was thinking, wow, this is not the Japan that I thought about when I was growing up. I really had no idea about the tradition of Japanese literature. So I began to be really intrigued by Japan. In high school, I had never had a single hour devoted to Japan, to Japanese history, Japanese literature, Japanese politics, economy, whatever. It was completely out of my curriculum. So that's why when I got exposed to this in college, I was so intrigued. And then in 1962, the Stanford Center for Japanese Studies was opened, an inter-university study center in Tokyo. I applied and was accepted and became a student in Tokyo. So I, that was the cementing experience for me, living and studying in Japan for a year. And I realized then that this was a personal intellectual passion for me. It was my way of understanding my heritage, my parents, really internalizing my background in a way that was so satisfying to me. So get back to this experience in Aikido. My freshman week at Princeton, we had a goodwill delegation from Todai come to demonstrate Aikido. And I'd never heard of Aikido until that time. We had a reception. And so I attended the reception and sat around. I mean, I stood in a little circle talking with the captain of the Todai Aikido team. And we had a very pleasant, 2 or 3 minutes of get acquainted chatter. Where are you from? And what are you studying? That sort of thing. And after 2 or 3 minutes, the Todai captain turns to his teammates and says in Japanese, Princeton must not be a very hard university to get into if this character got in, pointing to me. And he had no idea that I could understand some Japanese. I was a Nisei, and I heard Japanese spoken around me in camp and in my family. I was taking Japanese. I hadn't started much at that time. So I was so shocked that he said this. um, that I said to him, Oshatta tori, yes, as you say. And I turned around and walked away. And he came running after me in huge humiliation, embarrassment, and apology, and deeply bowed and apologized for what he said. That caused me to wonder, how do Japanese think about Japanese Americans? What prompted this Todai guy to, after 2 or 3 minutes, uh, say something that was as demeaning as it was? I mean, how did this guy ever get into Princeton? And I began thinking about that question for many years, because I could see around me the descendants of other countries, Italy or France or China or certainly Israel, having their mother countries organize their descendants in the United States, but not among Japanese Americans. And I always wondered why. Why didn't Japan reach out and seek to mobilize the descendants of Japanese immigrants in the United States?